You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Brie and Thais, episode 27.
Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Brie Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
A movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Happy Monday.
Hey Amplifiers, Brie
Thais.
Seeley. Jinx. Let's try that again. I'm Brie Seeley.
And I'm Thais Sky.
And we're here infusing your Monday with a little bit of love.
A lot of love. A lot of love.
That's what we do.
That's what we do.
So before we get started quick, well, first off, we have a kind of a different podcast interview for you today, and we're a little excited to share it. And but before we do that, wanted to extend an invitation to you. We have an event coming up in Los Angeles on December 13th.
Going to be so good.
It's going to be
good.
amazing, and we
It's
would
our-
love for you to come join us.
It's our holiday soiree, our holiday party, because, there's not enough holiday parties. There's just not enough.
Well, and it's been quite the year, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Granted, I don't really know what's going on in your life, but knowing what's going on in our lives and the lives of pretty much everyone we know, it's been kind of a crazy year. And
Yeah.
the elections that have been going on, everything's just so fucking bananas right now. Why can't we all just get together, look fancy, drink champagne, laugh our asses off, and just have a really good night?
There may or may not be a piñata at this event.
Oh my god, I'm so
May or may not.
excited.
May or may not. We cannot make any promises. However, if you see pictures of women in ball gowns
Well,
hitting
not
a
ball gowns.
hitting a
cocktail
piñata.
attire.
I prefer ball gown image, but yes, cocktail attire works too. Hitting a piñata with all their might. Don't be too worried about it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be amazing. So add this to your calendar. Tickets will be released shortly.
If they're not already.
If they're not already, depending on when we decide to release tickets. Anyway, everything you need to know is on our website, theamplifycollective.com. We are excited. We're so excited. We are excited. We are stoked. We are amplified around this soiree. So let's get into today's content.
Yeah, so today it's a little bit heavier content, I feel like, than normal. I think mostly because it's a topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about.
Yes.
So today we're kind of going to be talking about owning your shit, which a lot of people don't really like to do, and taking responsibility in your life.
So I was listening to a podcast last night with my teacher, Tara Brock. She is a Buddhist meditation teacher. I love her tremendously. She's one of the only podcasts I listen to. And
Besides Be Amplified.
well, it's a little weird though to listen to our own podcast.
That is true. We don't actually listen to our own podcast, but Thais has to edit it, so technically she listens to our own podcast.
I mean, so technically that is that is something I do. But
Side
anyway, so she said the word responsibility, and I love the way she said it. She was like, responsibility means being response-able. It means being able to respond to life with grace. That is what it looks like to take self-responsibility. And I love that because so many times when we talk about self-responsibility, we get this disgusting taste in our mouth because we think that means that we're going to be judging ourselves and berating ourselves all day. But that's not what responsibility means. It means being able to respond clearly without reaction, being able to respond to life because you've made the unconscious conscious. And now you get to decide how you want to react, and you get to decide how you want to proceed with life. So I love that, and I think that's the best way to start here, is just to remind you guys that taking self-responsibility does not equal self-hate. It equals understanding that you have total, unconditional control over your life and the results that you get in your life.
So, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
So I think one of the reasons that a lot of people maybe don't like to take self-responsibility is because it can be so easy to just place the blame or place the responsibility for what's happening in your life on external circumstances or other people.
Yes.
And so for me, the first step in taking responsibility is taking off that victim hat.
Yes. Guilt and shame is never about guilt and shame. Guilt and shame is a feeling that you have that blocks you from actually experiencing the deeper underlying emotions that may be coming up for you, because guilt and shame is easier to experience. It's something that we know a lot about. We say the Jewish guilt, like we grew up being guilted and shamed into the correct behaviors as children. And so now it's easier for us to feel guilt and shame versus the actual underlying emotion. And so just like you said, Brie, guilt, whenever you experience guilt and shame, I want you to trigger something in your mind. It's like, oh, Thais and Brie, they said that there's something deeper going on, and then explore that something deeper. And blaming others is part of wanting to define guilt onto another being because you are experiencing guilt, and it's not going to work.
So yeah, so I think the biggest thing with taking self-responsibility, like Thais said, is remembering that you are the one that has the control over what happens in your life. It is never about any person outside of you. It is never about any circumstance outside of you.
Never.
You have the power within you to change whatever it is you want to change. But in order to make that change, you have to first take responsibility for it. There's a reason that you are in the circumstance you are in. And as much as everyone's not really going to like hearing this, more often than not, in fact, I would say pretty much 99.9% of the time, it's because you chose it.
Yeah, if you're not getting clients, if you don't have money, if you don't have the opportunities you want, it's because you're somehow choosing not to have those things. I don't remember where I read this, but I remember someone saying that if you are thinking right now, that's not true. This person's a jackass and I hate my boss and I'm not making enough money, but it's because blah, 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 blah. Well, then what you're doing is you're defending the limitation. You're defending the limitation. You are defending that this is happening in your life. And when you defend a limitation, you get to keep it.
You are then choosing to have that limitation in your life.
Yes.
If so and so's an asshole, you get the choice of whether or not to keep them in your life. If you don't like your boss, you get the choice of keeping your job or finding a new one. If you're not making enough money, you get the choice to stay there, or you get to choose to make more.
Or even adding a nuance there. Like if you don't like your boss, it's probably because he's triggering something within you. So like what about you is feeling uncomfortable, and like what unmet need do you have that you're not looking at that this person is activating within you? It has nothing to do with the other person. So yes, either quit your job, or if that is literally not a possibility for you, then you need to really look at why this person is triggering you the way it is. Let's talk a little racy, a little tensiony conversation here. But like this is the same, we can be saying the exact same thing about Donald Trump. Okay, we can name call him and call him an idiot, and we can be in just awe that this man even exists and all this stuff. And if we really want to understand from a spiritual perspective what's going on in the collective consciousness, we have to understand that he's bothering you because there's something within you that is being triggered and being activated. Period. It's still, even though it's something like Donald Trump, I know it can feel so much like it has to do with Donald Trump. It doesn't have to do with Donald Trump. It has to do with you. Always. Always. Spiritual truth. This is a universal law, people. Universal law number one. If there's anything happening to you, it's because you've allowed it. If there is a result that you're not getting, it's because you're choosing it. And the more that you can say yes to embracing this universal law and being in alignment with this universal law, the more you can start to heal, grow, and manifest the money, the job, the whatever that you want. Response able.
So Thais and I talked before we recorded this, and we are both going to share with you guys a situation in which we did not want to take responsibility in our lives, kind of how it played out and how we transformed the situation once we chose something different, once we chose to stop playing the victim, and once we chose to take responsibility for it.
Yeah. So why don't you go first, Brie?
Oh, why don't I? So, I think the thing that I want to share with you guys, well, I don't think, I guess the thing that I am sharing with you guys clearly, is when I had my day job. So I said yes to this job. I was offered this job a month after, so I became the receptionist for this company. And a month in, they said, "We want to promote you." And I said, "No, thank you. I've seen what everyone goes through and I'm good." And then another month in, they said, we want to promote you. And after a few months, I finally said yes. And I said yes, full well knowing that I didn't want it. I said yes to this job, knowing that I was choosing something that was not in alignment with who I was in the world or what I wanted from life. And I spent 8 years resenting that job. 8 years, which is, by the way, a long fucking time to hate every single moment of every single day of your life. Like, it's a long ass time. And I cursed, society for making me have a job. And I cursed the fact that I didn't have a rich family to support me. And I cursed the fact that I didn't have a white knight come in to save me and pay all my bills for me and all of these things. And I funneled all of this energy into all of these other things, all of these external things to try and fix my situation. And it took a really long time. And in fact, it wasn't even until after I quit that job that I actually took responsibility for it. Like, so even after the 8 years, I was still unwilling to take responsibility
Wow.
for that job. And it caused a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, like even physical discomfort. I worked from home, but I had a separate laptop. And even just looking at that laptop would cause me to go into panic and anxiety.
So before you go any further, I want to take a pause here because I feel like this is something that a lot of people experience. I know I experience, which is the white knight syndrome, which is this belief that in the corporate world they also call it the TR syndrome, that you'll just somehow be saved. That if you just work hard, that someone's going to come in and save you, give you the promotion, give you the raise, and you'll know that you're not taking responsibility for your results when you are in any way, shape, or form experiencing this place within you that just hopes that somehow you'll be saved. And I wanted to interrupt because I feel like that's such an important statement and something that I recently have really come to see that that's what I was doing when I first moved to LA. Everyone told me leap and the net will appear, and I even believed it. I actually fully believed that when you leap, the net will appear. And I remember when I left, I took the big leap. I quit my job. I drove cross country all by myself. I moved to LA. Like I started my job, my business full on, and I still wasn't making the money or getting the results that I needed. And Brie, I just kept thinking to myself, like, where the fuck is the net? Like, where the fuck is the net? Because the net has not appeared. I'm suffering. My finances are suffering. Where the fuck is the net?
Okay, so I want to pause you quick because
Okay.
I know what your answer is, and I'm going to talk about before that answer. I want to just address this. Like, so I just want to point out, like, do you guys see how much energy gets put into this white knight syndrome?
Yes, so
Like,
much.
Tice is sitting here, like, focusing all this energy on someone coming to save her, and so
Yeah.
she's taking up all of this energy that could be applied to just creating the net herself.
Yeah.
Do you get that? Like, and so same with me. I spent all this energy searching
8 years.
outside of myself, all of this energy, waiting for an investor or someone to love my fashion so much that they want to support my brand, or, a boyfriend that wants to just pay all my bills, or like all of these things. Like, I spent so much time and energy putting out into the world all of this stuff, when in reality, had I spent that same amount of time and energy building that net for my leap, it would have changed everything.
Yeah.
So, this whole like looking outside of yourself for someone to come in and fix you will never work.
And
And let me save you some time and energy right now and remind you that if you choose to funnel your energy there, you will be disappointed.
I mean, and it's amazing at how we all do it. We all think like if just one person would give me a chance, one person, that's all I need, just one person to give me a chance or to pay me or to hire me, one person. And while there is the co-creation element of this, and we both get that, we're not in it alone. It's not a dog eat dog world. Like we are constantly co-creating with the universe, and when we meet the universe halfway, it will meet us and it will support us.
But just to be clear, the white knight syndrome is not co-creation.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Even though there is that co-creative element, you can tell that you're in the white knight syndrome where you feel kind of helpless
And desperate.
and desperate, and you blame. You do a lot of blaming, whether it's blaming yourself or you blame others. Blaming, guilt, shame. These are all opportunities for you to notice that you're not in co-creation. Because co-creation requires you to be in a certain vibrational energy. that we've talked about before. It requires you to be confident in who you are and know that your needs are going to be met and taking action anyway. Totally different energy. So, like I was going to say before Breeze pause, because I think that's really good, and then we can get back to your story. So many pauses. So many pauses.
This is a really
so
good subject.
I know. So I realized like the net's not gonna appear. I need to build my own fucking net. And that's what I did. I built my own fucking net. I supported myself. I created opportunities for income to come in myself. And the minute, literally, the minute I realized that I needed to build my own fucking net is when Brie and I started to amplify. That's like literally like the same like week that I realized that I was gonna have to save myself, that I was gonna have to take responsibility for the fact that I wasn't getting the results that I wanted, is when Brie and I started these dinner parties. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Because it was that week that I was like, you know what? That I'm not gonna fucking wait for some clients to come to me. I'm gonna create client opportunities, and that's when I created that dinner. And then I got sick, and then Brie came, and then Amplify started. So it's like, okay, keep going.
Now I don't, where was I at with my story? Oh, I mean, so with my story, it was kind of the same thing. I mean, it was in, and I know I've talked about it here before, is that, that place that I was at last year where I was still just waiting for someone to come save me. I was even dating a guy and I was waiting for him to be like, oh, honey, I'll just take care of it. Like, it's fine. Like, and I was an idiot. Like, seriously, I look back on that now and I just laugh, and it was only 10 months ago. But like, it's it's amazing how much energy we put outside of us trying to get someone else to fix our problems for us, when in reality, if you applied a fraction of that energy to solving your problems for yourself, not only would you solve them, but you would find infinitely greater results, and you would be more fulfilled because you fucking did it yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's been this year when I finally started to take responsibility for my financial situation and for my business and for my clients and for everything, that I have literally transformed everything about my life in the last 9 months,
Yeah.
including, completely, I've paid off all sorts of debt and I have money coming in. I've moved. I'm creating the kinds of friendships I want in my life. Like, I've really truly built everything about my life that I want, like my perfect day. I'm living it because I took responsibility, being in a place that I didn't like, and I chose to fix it for myself.
So, again, I'm going to remind you because it's so important. This is the number one universal law before law of attraction, before you can even start co-creating, before you can even start, getting what you want. You first have to heal the past. And part of healing the past is recognizing that anything that is happening in your outer life is a reflection of what is happening in the inner life. And you need to take responsibility for your inner life in order to change your outer life. It's plain and simple. Anything that you manifested it. Everything that's happening in your life is because you want it. You created it. You chose it. It doesn't matter what it is, people. It could be, a job you don't like. It could be, it can be in any capacity. Like, this is just what's happening. Now, this is not an opportunity for you to feel sorry for yourself. If you have a dis-ease in your body, if you have something that's coming up, it's not that you deserve it. You don't deserve bad or wrong things happening to you. The conversation isn't about deserving, because you deserve the best. You just may not see it yourself, which is why you manifested what you manifested. And I want to add just a layer of understanding here, that oftentimes we don't understand why we manifested what we manifested. We don't know why we have a dis-ease in our body, or why we keep manifesting wrong partners, or why we keep manifesting. We don't understand the why. And so it's very easy to then play the blame game. And I invite you to remove the question of why, because it's not up to you to determine your why. It's not up to you to determine the how. All you have to ask yourself is, what is the invitation here? What can I open myself up to here? Where can I, dig deeper within myself? Where can I ask what is happening on a deeper level here? That's simply what we're saying. This is not a blame. This is not a victim. This is not a deserving conversation. If you have something happen to you, if your mother died, it's not because you deserve it. That's not the way to think about it. It's simply an invitation for you to look at what is happening here. How can I experience this in a deeper way? How can I be compassionate to myself in the process? And how can I learn and grow from this experience to the best of my capabilities? Life is not meant to be comfortable. I think that that's cute, that that's what we think that life is about, like accumulating all this stuff so that we then live this like very comfortable life and then we don't really have to do much else and then we retire and then we like drive convertibles and travel the world and then we die. That's not what life is about. That's not why we're on this planet. We're not on this planet to accumulate all this stuff and that's it. The whole point of us being on this planet is to learn and to grow. It's school. We're in school right now. We're in 100 years of school. And so really, really look at what you're supposed to learn right now. And if you have any doubt, just look at the results that you're getting because that's right there an indication of what you have to learn.
So, Miss Thais, in the last little bit, why don't you share with us a situation in which you were not taking responsibility and how that played out for you?
Sure. Yeah. So, for me, it all comes back to the whole catalyst for my spiritual growth, which was my binge eating disorder. And it wasn't just binging, it was a lot of anxiety, depression. I was experiencing a lot of like these bipolar tendencies where I'd be very happy one minute and then completely depressed the next. And it played out as binge eating, as anxiety, as just a lot of depressive tendencies. And for 3 years, I denied that I even have a problem. For 3 years, I just kept hoping it was just going to go away one day. Like if I just exercised enough, it would just go away. If I just ate properly, it would just go away. If I, gave myself a cheat system, it would just go away. I mean, I tried every diet in the book. I even had a gum cucumber diet where I would chew gum to keep myself from feeling hungry. And then I would eat cucumbers because it has a very water content. Anyway,
Isn't that kind of like the Mean Girls diet? What does she say? She's like, I don't eat anything, and then if I'm about to pass out, I eat a cube of cheese.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I tried everything. I would eat like a max of 500 calories a day with soups because soup was supposed to be, it's filling your stomach. I mean, I would eat only salads. I would deprive myself of breakfast. I would go to the gym for 2 hours. I remember my boyfriend at the time called me right before I got to the gym and he was like, I'll call you after class. And he called me after class, which was a 90-minute class, and I was still on the elliptical. And then he went and he played, hang out with his buddies and he called me again and I was still on the elliptical. Like, it's just I was trying to burn all the calories from all the food I was consuming and yet I still didn't think I had a problem. And it took just 3 grueling years for me to recognize that this wasn't just going to go away and I was going to have to look at it and I was going to have to take responsibility for it. And only when I did that was I going to start healing myself. And that took another 5 years of doing the inner work, of doing the outer work, of recalibrating my diet, of being okay with where I'm at for me to have gone to the place where I'm now, where it's been like a year that I literally haven't had a binge. I don't calorie count. I never thought I would get to the place where I wouldn't be calorie counting every meal. I used to have a journal that I would keep with me and I would like write down all the things that I would eat and calculate them all the time. And what I've come to see now, and this is something we can definitely talk about in another podcast, is about rigidity and deprivation and routines and how that shit doesn't work. But I will say that it was only when I realized that this wasn't going to go away that I needed to start looking at it and I needed to start loving myself in the process that everything started to shift for me. And self responsibility is not often looked at as love, but it actually is love. Like when you take responsibility for a plant, it flourishes because you start to water it, you start to give it attention, and it grows.
Oh, is that my problem?
Yes, that is your problem. That is your problem. So, it's like when we take responsibility for something, like when we take responsibility for a cat, it will flourish because now it's loved. And so in the same way, like if we take self-responsibility, then hopefully then that equates love as well. Like we're taking time to love ourselves and love who we are and love the process. And yep, so that was my experience and it's it's amazing what happens when you start to bring the unconscious to the conscious and you start to really look at who you are and how you're being and the results that you're getting and deciding that somehow you're wanting this. I'm going to end it with just one thing and then we can kind of wrap it up and bring on our guest. But I think I actually shared this before on this podcast. I can't remember, but I love it so much. It was a quote from Billions, and it's a TV show about a billionaire. And he made a mistake, and his mistake cost like millions and millions of dollars. I mean, he's handling like billions of dollars of other people's money. That's how he makes his billions. And you can only imagine, like, can you imagine losing someone else's millions and millions of dollars? And so he made a mistake, and he went to his firm's psychologist, behaviorist, and he went to her and he said, I made a mistake. I know I made a mistake. And now I want to know why I made the mistake. And when he said that, it's so powerful because it's not about making a mistake. We all make mistake, but we made it for a reason. Everything we do is a reason. There's a reason for the underlying everything that we do, including making mistakes. And so when he asked that, he's like, I want to know why I made that mistake. That's taking self responsibility. That's acknowledging that he, in some way, wanted the results that he got. And now he's looking at why he wanted those results so that he can change it and so that he can make more money for his people. And so I want to leave you with that. Why? Why are you making the mistakes that you're making? Why are you getting the results that you're getting? Like, what is the underlying element there? The more you can look at and heal that, the more you can get what you want.
Awesome. Well, I think that is a really great note to bring our guest on.
Oh my God, Brie. I am so in love with Melinda Cohen, and I am so excited that she is on as our guest in our podcast today. Melinda is just a brilliant, brilliant individual. Audience people, you're in for quite a treat. So, Brie, why don't you read her bio?
Melinda Cohen is an inspired storyteller and your guide to embodied grace, always looking for new ways to break the rules of life and reinvent her own. She coaches a handful of humans brave enough to replace trying with trusting.
Ooh.
And is constantly exploring the art of existence through channeled writing, acting, and the producing of conscious content. Melinda has written countless screenplays, spoken about her own transformation on stages and videos, and is gaining more and more insight into what it is exactly she is destined to create in this life.
Amazing, Melinda. Welcome to Be Amplified.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Yay. So the question we like to start off with was, what does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
That's a great question. I guess I feel like the answer in a nutshell would be the ability to be truly present with what's happening right now. And that means, and the way that pertains to being amplified, I think life is already amplified. I think most of us just don't know how to actually see that because we're so focused on the things we don't yet have or the things we think we need to get to. So I think most of us are living in sort of the frequency of getting somewhere that is not here. Even if it's only 10 seconds ahead. It's like, okay, I'm walking in my car, so I'm already thinking about getting in my car. I'm already thinking about traffic. I'm already thinking about the emails I have to do at work. Before you know it, you've created a whole, inner reality in your mind of all the things that are happening in the future. Well, the truth is you're walking through potentially one of the most beautiful streets, and there's literally like flowers and trees and little dogs and things around you that are magical and amplified, but you're not seeing them because you don't know how to be present. So that is, to me, that's what I always come back to. And it seems so simple, but I do believe that it is kind of the key to unlocking just a magical experience in every moment.
So is presence something that you've always had? And if not, how did you start opening up to it and kind of making that your way of being?
It's definitely not something I've always consciously had. I think I was drawn to it without knowing what it was. I think generally actors are drawn to that because part of what good acting is being in the moment and allowing whatever wants to happen in the moment to flow through you, and really listening and really just being there with whatever the circumstance of the character is. And so my focus for the vast majority of my life was acting because I think that was what I was looking for. But the only way into it was through the vehicle of acting, at least so I thought. And then it's funny because the more you study acting, or at least in my experience, the further down that path I went, the more I came away from that, because the more technique I had, the more preparation I was doing, the more breaking down of scenes and understanding the subtext and putting, marking up my script. Before I knew it, I had created something that was very much a fabrication and not at all just an honest experience of what's happening in the present. And it started to not be as fun. And I couldn't understand really why. I was having a hard time. I didn't have the awareness to understand why. All I knew was the result was that I was feeling like I was not really enjoying the process of acting anymore. And so some of the frustration was kind of the turning point for me to start looking in other places. And that journey has been long. And a lot of it came really from reading. One of the first books I read on this was The Power of Now, which is kind of a staple. But really that's, the whole book is about that concept. And so starting to apply that in my work as an actress, but also in my day-to-day, was tremendously challenging because no one had ever, we don't get taught how to do that. That's not like part of the curriculum in school. It's all about preparing for the future. So we're literally conditioned to live in the future, and to come out of that and step into the now fully and let that be enough, while also still striving and expanding, because I think that's what we're here to do as humans. I don't believe we're here to just sit and stare at a meadow, all day and go, oh, I'm so present. This is great. I believe we're here to create, and we're here to evolve. And so finding the balance between moving, expansion, and presence is, I think, for me, a lifelong journey. I don't think I'll ever perfect it, but that's also kind of not the point. It's like the joy of coming back to the present is what I'm really looking for, and I can't actually come back to it unless I forget it.
I love it, and I love that you talk about that balance. I often talk about it as a tension, the tension in the desire, right? The tension of being where you are without having manifested that desire yet, while simultaneously, being okay there, being okay with wanting something and being the creative process of actualizing that something without having that something yet. And I find that tension, that creative process, is so essential, but too many times, because we find it so uncomfortable, we immediately go to, well, then I don't want anything, and then we become numb to our desires and numb to the creative process because we can't literally sit with that tension.
Yeah. And I think it's always, for me right now, I feel like I'm learning so much, and I'm having like major breakthroughs every day, really. And that's kind of become normal for me. And yet I'm not learning a ton of new things. It's not new information. It's like, I'm getting deeper cuts of what I already know. And I'm in this refinement process, I feel like, where I'm being shown, like I'm being taught the subtle differences between things, like the subtle difference between desire and longing. Those have two different energies about them. To me, desire kind of feels like a joyful experience. And longing feels like something that I need to have to be happy, but it's something that's not here now, not here yet. So the words we use are so powerful. I was listening to Alan Watts the other day, who I'm obsessed with, and he was talking about language and how language is, wizardry, basically. And he said, we don't think about the fact that spelling has the word spell in it. Like, we are casting spells with the words we speak, and we are creating our reality with the words we choose. And the more specific we can get, I love language, I'm a writer as well. So the more specific we can get, and finding these nuances, these subtle differences between words that can seem almost like the same thing, but discerning between those can create a huge difference. Like, I did this 2-day personal transformation workshop with Preston and Alexi. I don't know if you guys know them.
Yep.
Yeah, they're good friends of mine, and they co-hosted the Samurai Games, which is this super intense experience where I don't want to give away too much, because if anyone wants to do it, it's better to kind of walk in blind. But it's basically just a very confronting game where you can't hide from yourself.
Is it like the Hunger Games?
Kind of. It has a little bit of a Hunger Games vibe, for sure. Like, you do fight to the death, and there's a lot at stake. So, so in that experience, in this very heightened, very intense, very pressurized context, all of your shit's going to come up, right? You're going to be forced to face off with like all of the stuff that you can hide and run from as much as you want in your day-to-day comfort zone. But like, in that environment, you're going to be faced off with it. And one of the things that I noticed was really interesting, because I pride myself in being very unattached to things. I really feel like that's a virtue to practice non-attachment. And I've been sort of groomed for that, because I moved, 26 times by the time I was 18. And I was consistently in the practice of letting go of all my material possessions and all my friendships and starting over. And so it hasn't been super hard for me to be unattached. But what I've noticed is that there's a shadow side to that as well. And that shadow side is indifference. And I noticed that as we were starting to play some of these games that are needed to actually compete in the Samurai Games, a lot of them are physical and require, hand-eye coordination and balance and just athletic skills that I don't have. And because my strengths are pretty much entirely in the creative field. And I noticed very quickly as I was practicing some of the stuff and I was not very good at it, that I went from being excited to going into the just like, I don't care enough. I'm over it. And I noticed how I was using indifference as like a defense mechanism to protect myself from actually just facing the fact that I'm not good at something.
That's one of the, yes. Yes, when I cared about something a lot and I found like I was losing in some capacity, like I wasn't going to get that thing, I would just go to the complete other spectrum of, well, then I don't care. Well,
Absolutely.
then it doesn't matter. Well, then, I don't need that anyway.
I think it's the same thing you were speaking to when you were talking about desire. It's that same concept. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. And it's so cool because this stuff is so nuanced. It's such a just an energetic shift. And if we're not in tune enough with ourselves, it's very hard to discern the difference between these energetic shifts. So what are some things that you do to help you kind of center and calm and get clear within yourself?
That's kind of a day-to-day ongoing thing. And I think I do so much more of it than I'm even aware of at this point because it's become so ingrained in my routine. But I do spend a lot of time outdoors. Then like being in nature is kind of a huge part of this for me. And I think it's different for everyone, but I feel like nature is the example of that, right? It's already living in a present state. It's literally in the frequency of presence because trees, they're not going anywhere. They're just like existing blissfully. And they're not in resistance to anything either. You can come and you can chop off a branch of a tree and it's not going to fight you, right? It's not resisting the experience of what is happening now. And just being in the frequency of that, and animals have that too. For me, that gives me a way in really quickly because I feel like my body, which is also just energy, right, can match that frequency. And so it's almost like the trees are my teachers because they're living the example of it. And if I get quiet enough within my own self and I give myself the time and I make it a priority and I carve out that moment to go and tap into their frequency, I can very quickly drop into that place of connection and presence and knowingness that I'm already there. Like it's already all here. I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere to be. Like there's nothing to learn. I'm already it. And being reminded of that, throughout the day consistently is so important. But if I can't access nature, meditation is a huge tool that I use. And I journal a lot as well, just to really, if I have questions because I'm noticing that something is like what I thought was a virtue is suddenly not serving me, I'll just go into it with a writing exercise and I'll just get to the bottom of it through writing.
That's amazing. I love that. Like using your writing since you are already so connected to words anyway.
Yeah, that's a huge tool for me. Absolutely. And I also feel like just getting it on the page, it gives you a different perspective,
Yeah. So tell us, like, what's something that's been coming up for you that you are navigating towards? Like, let's walk someone through like a mini hero's journey of like, what is something that either you have experienced in the past and you've kind of gone full circle now, or you're it's still challenging you right now in your process for giving space to it?
Yeah, sure. Walking you through the step-by-step process of like what it means to live with the heightened sense of self-awareness in that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I know that anything that triggers me or affects me negatively or evokes any sort of, just an unpleasant reaction within me emotionally is pointing to something within myself that I haven't yet put enough attention, love, or light on.
Okay, pause. So what you're saying, let's break it down even to like the
I'll follow it up with an example, but go ahead.
Yeah. So like if I were to say something like, oh my God, you're so mean, okay? And whatever. And that triggered something within you. You're telling me that it's not about the person that's saying that you're mean?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that person, I believe everything that we experience, whether it's a human being or a circumstance or whatever it may be, everything that's showing up in our experience is here because it has something to teach us about ourselves. And we can choose to accept that or not. But if we look at the world that way, life becomes easier and more enjoyable because everything is here to serve you in some way. Even if it's someone screaming at you and telling you to, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on your podcast,
Yes,
but
you
I was
are.
about to.
Do it.
Even if it's the homeless guys telling you to fuck off, like whatever it may be, you can find value in that experience if you choose to, and if you choose to look within. So if you were to tell me that I'm mean and that would trigger something in me, I would get really clear, first of all, what is it triggering in me? Because if there's a trigger, if there's a feeling of, what is she talking about? That's not fair. I didn't do anything, right? That could be kind of a normal response. The first question I would ask myself is, well, did I potentially do something that I wasn't aware of? Did I show up in a way that could have made her think I was mean, that didn't seem like it would be mean to me, but in her experience it could have been? And so immediately I would put myself in the other person's position, and I would try and recreate whatever interaction we've had up until that point and see if I can identify what it is that would have prompted you to say that. And then if I can find something, see if I agree with that, if that feels true to me. And if not, understand other reasons why you may have said that. And if I can't find any reasons, then understand if basically the conclusion I arrive at is you're delusional, you're a crazy person, and you just have an issue with me because of your own stuff, then I would look at, okay, so why is this triggering within me? Why am I allowing this person's reaction to me to have an impact on my emotion?
Well, I want to pause right there because what you're sharing is it's the crux, the most beautiful thing about taking self-responsibility that I think still, even though this is something that Brie and I preach all the time, that we teach as well, it kind of goes over people's heads. The idea that just because if someone is doing something that bothers us, it actually may have very little to do with that person and everything to do with us and our perception and why it's triggering us. And it's a conversation I have with clients on a consistent basis. Well, this person did this. Okay, that's great. And why is it bothering you? And so I'm glad that you're breaking it down for us, because this is exactly the type of thoughts and questions that we need to be asking ourselves to increase our awareness of our lives and why other people are impacting us the way that they are.
Well, it's a combination of things. It's really the important question to ask is, what are you making it mean? What are you making it mean about yourself? A lot of times it'll only trigger because some part of me may think that person's right.
Yeah.
It's like, oh shit, maybe I am mean, right? And that's why it triggers, and that's where the ego wants to protect us, it wants to defend us, it wants to go, no, you're not mean, they're crazy, right?
Yeah.
And find all the ways to make it their fault, like you did this to me. But I don't believe that anything is happening to us. I think it's all happening through us and for us. And if we choose to see it that way, then yeah, it's responsibility. It's saying, okay, I created this. I literally created a person to show up in my experience and tell me I was mean. Why did I create this? What am I meant to learn from that?
So quick, hold on. I want to dive a little bit deeper into this idea of taking responsibility, because, this is something that's learned. Like you said earlier about presence, this isn't something we're taught. So
no, unfortunately,
right?
Not yet.
Well,
Not
those
yet.
of us get to be examples. It's brilliant. But my question is, do you remember when you started taking responsibility? Like, what was the catalyst, or how did you shift into this way of thinking? If some people are like, I don't know how I'm not taking responsibility, or how do I start taking responsibility, or,
Totally. And it was my boyfriend, actually, my partner of 8 years. He was someone who had a tremendous amount of, he was very concerned with other people's experiences. He's like very, it's interesting because he's also very unapologetic, which kind of seems like almost a contradiction. But we're all contradictions in a way. But he was always very aware of how his behavior might impact someone else. And he would look to himself first to see whether, he was potentially infringing on someone else in a way that would make them uncomfortable. And so when we started dating, there were definitely areas where, I would react to something in a victim consciousness, and he would pretty much force me to take responsibility for the situation. And I would spend a lot of time crying and screaming and defending myself and trying desperately not to. And usually, eventually, I would come around to realizing, okay, maybe there is some part that I played in this. And he gave me a book, actually, right when we first started dating, called The Road Less Traveled. It's a very famous kind of old school self-help book.
I love that he gave you a book. He's like,
he gave me a book.
In order for us to continue to date.
Basically, I mean, not continue. He was just like, listen, I'm pretty clear in terms of how I view relationships. If you read this chapter on relationships, you'll know where I stand, and then we can kind of have a discussion, like if that works for you.
That's
and
amazing.
I'd never dated anyone who had that sort of that level of awareness and that level of like he was very clear what his core values were coming into the relationships. He was like, these are my core values. You know, do they align with yours? I was like, core values? I've never even thought about core values. What do you mean? So he was a huge catalyst for my growth. And what we like to, he and I have a company together called the Slinky Effect. And I'll explain what that is because it pertains to what I'm sharing. So the Slinky Effect is this concept that if you're in relationship with everything, right? Whether it's a partnership or a friendship or in relationship to the universe, you're always in relationship to everything around you. So taking me and Adam as an example, if one of us is one end of a slinky, and we're gonna move, we're gonna make a move. It's usually one person that first side of the slinky has to go first, and then the other slinky, because it's connected, will follow, and not just follow, but actually go further. And so you move continually in the same direction, growing together while pulling each other forward. And that's how we like to describe our relationship and how we like to describe the relationship that we have to, on a meta level to the universe. And it also is a good way to understand how, when that doesn't happen, like a lot of times someone will go on a journey of self-discovery and make huge steps, and grow and expand, and their partner will remain the same. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the slinky turns into a ball and chain. Mm-hmm. So there's only so long that the slinky will stretch before it breaks. Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to that. So even though he was kind of the first step, and then I was like, wait, I can read a book and have my mind blown and like completely change my relationship to myself and just everything just by reading a book. Like, this is insane. And I started going to the library and I checked out all the Abraham Hicks books, all the books. And I just went super deep into, I was like watching The Secret, and I was just getting really deep into all this stuff. And he at that point had gotten completely complacent, was like, I know who I am. I know what I know. None of this interests me. You can't explain to me how the children in Africa are starving with the whole law of attraction thing. Like, you can't justify that. So obviously this is not true. He completely wrote it off. And I went really far into that. And so ultimately I went further in that direction and then catapulted him. And so we kind of kept catapulting each other. And it's just been a consistent thing. And it's really beautiful to see how we can do that in relationships when we're aware of that phenomenon. We can be the slinky with our friends and, our family. And if we want to be, and if the other person's willing to kind of share the same vision.
That's beautiful. I feel like that's something that I've been trying to explain with words, but I don't know. I've always explained it as like a ladder. Like, you go up a step and then you help the other person up, and then maybe they take the other step and then they help you up. And I like this idea of the slinky much better. So,
cool.
You go talk to my angels about this concept, Thais, okay?
Okay, yeah. I'm talking to her angels about manifesting a man for Bree.
Thais is my direct.
I don't know how I got this job, but I somehow got involved in being the director of Bree's Angels.
That's hilarious.
So.
Just for my love life. I can talk to them about everything else.
So back to that hero's journey. So
yeah,
what is a moment where you kind of walked yourself through that journey of self-awareness and self-understanding and got to the other side?
Okay, so I'll give you a great example. Recently, so we were going somewhere to stay in a different city, and we didn't have anywhere to stay, and we were going to get an Airbnb. And then someone was like, oh, I have a friend, who's got an extra room. You can stay there. And so we were like, okay, we'll do that. And we didn't know this person. We didn't know the space. And, it was interesting because we walked into the space, and very quickly I felt I didn't feel really comfortable in the space because it wasn't, in a lot of ways, it wasn't up to my standards of like cleanliness and order and you know what I mean? That sort of stuff. And I felt like my first impulse was to just book an Airbnb and not be there. And so I noticed there was a trigger. I was like, okay, there's something coming up in me that's going, this is not working for me. So let me sit with that. Let me get under that. And so I spent some time just kind of like taking in the space and really trying to identify and pinpoint what it was in particular that was kind of grinding me. And I mean, it was this whole, like, I don't know how much time we have, but it was this whole thing where I started sort of noticing that a lot of it was just kind of like worn. It's just like a little bit worn. It was like, why am I judging something that's old? Am I only okay with things that are fresh and clean and young and vibrant looking? Like, I believe that we get to love everything, right? All of it, the full experience. So here I am judging and choosing to withdraw my love from something that is not up to par in my esteem. So I started to really sit with that, and that took me on the subject of death, because I was thinking about death and deterioration and decomposition and all these stages of matter being broken down, which are also part of life, because you can't have life without death, and how I felt myself rejecting that process simply by being in a space that was representing that to me in a way. So I started going on YouTube, and I went down this rabbit hole of watching time-lapse videos of fruits and like animal carcasses
Oh my God, this is
decomposing,
amazing.
which was so fascinating because I was watching videos and, you know, there's maggots like crawling through this lizard. And I'm like, so there's a part of me that's repulsed by this and wants to just not watch it. But is that also just my own fear of my own mortality? You know? So I started really sitting with all of that. And then I took another lap through the place, and I kind of really took it in, and suddenly it hit me. And I was like, oh my God, there it is. This place reminds me of my father's apartment. It's like everything about it reminds me of my father's apartment. And I'm transported back into that dynamic with him, because it's not actually the place. It's never actually the thing, right? The thing is just a neutral event. It's just the story that we assign to it. And I realized, I was like, okay, that makes sense now. And now that I can see that, I can actually stop judging it. And I can stop having this story of I'm better than this and I shouldn't be here. And I can start just being grateful for the fact that I have a place that I can feel safe in, right? And I can recognize that it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter where I am. My state of being, my emotional experience, I should be able to have that be preserved regardless of the circumstance, right? So like if I'm going to volunteer in a slum, or I'm lounging by the pool in a Malibu's mansion, who I'm being shouldn't change.
Yeah.
My light, my love, my joy, my ability to be grateful shouldn't be affected by my circumstances, because that's not who I'm choosing to be. I'm choosing to transcend that. And so I was like, so this is actually a gift, because A, it's showing me stuff with my dad that I get to work through. And B, it's challenging me to transcend my circumstance and tap into the highest version of myself, despite what the environment looks like. And I think that's really important for the work I'm setting out to do on this planet. You know, a part of me has been really playing with the idea of moving into the forest recently. And this experience has reminded me that like the forest doesn't need me as much as the cities do right now, because the cities have all this old unprocessed energy that needs to be healed through, and the forest is good, you know. Like the forest isn't gonna that experience is gonna be fine without my presence. My presence is needed in the places where people don't know how to work through that. And another thing I realized was that what really bothered me about something being worn is it felt like a lack of care, felt like a lack of love, because there was a lot of things in the space that could have been beautified had someone actually given time and invested energy into making it more beautiful. So it felt like it wasn't cared for. And that, you know, all of these things were just literally walking into an apartment, you know, that all of that became available to me because I chose to be aware of my experience walking into an apartment.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. And, for those of you listening, it may sound nuanced and it may sound sometimes like what's even the point, but the whole point is that if you can show up fully for all aspects of your life and you can be fully grounded and present in everything that's happening in your life, then the way that you just become a happier person. Things outside of you don't affect you as much because you've done the work. So a lot of times we want to do what I call a spiritual bypass, right? Where we want to get to the happy place without going through the middle stuff. But it's only, as Melinda so beautifully laid out, only by going through the middle stuff, being super aware of everything that's coming up and why it's coming up within us, can we create the space for spontaneity and joy and happiness and all the good things.
Yeah, because if we're attached to our happiness being dependent on anything but a beautiful environment, a perfect partner, a perfect job, whatever, we don't have power, because the moment that gets taken away, we're screwed. So to be entirely self-sufficient and know that you can trust yourself to show up in your best potential, no matter where you are, no matter who you're faced, no matter what the circumstance, that to me is like true power. I need nothing, therefore I am powerful. That's one of my favorite mantras.
Amazing.
We are unfortunately at the end of our podcast. This was such a quick and
it just went by so fast. Oh,
it did. It evaporated.
Yeah.
But talk about being present.
Yeah. But thank you so much. Your content, I feel was really unique and so applicable for all of our listeners. And I really love conversation.
I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Melinda, for sharing your heart with us so beautifully. Tell us, to all of the listeners who want to get to know more about you and your brilliant content, where can they find more about you?
Yeah, so I'm mainly active on Facebook. You can find me there. It's Melinda Cohen, Cohen. I'm pretty active there. I have a website, which leads to a number of other websites because I have a gazillion websites. So the main portal website to get you anywhere you need to go is melindacohen.com. Super easy.
Amazing.
And that'll take you to all the different, the Slinky Effect is the one I mentioned that I have with my partner, and we do couples coaching and stuff as well. And we have an online membership program right now called Slinky Links, where you get to become a link of the Slinky. It's all about tribe and community and all of that. So check us out, and we'd love to have you.
Amazing. Yes, we'll make sure to add all of these to the show notes. Thank you, Melinda. Thank you, everyone who has been listening.
And you can always find us at theamplifycollective.com. And on all the socials at The Amplify Co. And of course, if you are in LA, come join us in a few weeks in downtown LA for our holiday soiree. It's going to be super fancy. So thank you all for listening. We love you, and go be amplified.